What is curriculum for excellence? The simple answer to that is that curriculum for excellence is just Scotland's national curriculum. And actually, this whole situation becomes an awful lot less complicated if we just think of it in those terms. Development on what we call curriculum for excellence began in 2002, not long after devolution, under the then Labour and Liberal coalition. The feeling at the time was that the existing curriculum that we used to know as 5 to 14 needed refreshed. It had become a bit too focused on testing. It had become something that was maybe a barrier to excellent education and not something that was going to help it happen in Scotland's schools. So what we had in the country was something called a national debate on education. And over the course of a few months, it gathered in views, and ultimately, that was what led to the creation of this thing that we still, for some reason, call curriculum for excellence. The idea behind this new curriculum is actually quite straightforward, to be honest. The sort of basic principle is that it would give, more relevance for young people, more freedom for teachers, and, as a consequence of all that, better education system, better schooling in Scotland. So, how does it work? The starting point are these things that we call the four capacities. So they are successful learners, confident individuals, responsible citizens, and effective contributors. That being the starting point means that the idea here is to draw the focus onto this principle that we are trying to create or develop, maybe a better word, human beings. That this isn't about pouring content into the heads of children so we can test it later on. There's a bigger picture to what we're trying to do here. Now, beyond those four capacities, we also have 7 principles of curricular design. Things like depth and breadth and relevance, these sorts of ideas that are meant to underpin how we go about building a curriculum for our young people. And that is one of the kind of fundamentals here. Curriculum for excellence is not this top down on high curriculum that handed everything to teachers. It was about creating these circumstances in which teachers and schools and even young people would be involved in the development of their curriculum, of the things that they learn in their schools. Within all of that, there are 3 areas regarded as the responsibility of all. They are literacy, numeracy, and something called health and well-being. And we will come to all 3 of those later on in this series. The individual learning, bear with me, is then structured around things called experiences and outcomes, which are this sort of series of, I say series, there are hundreds and hundreds of them, but this series of statements about the things that students can do. And to pull all of that together, as you can now see, we have the traditional ridiculous infographic showing the young people at the centre and everything building out around it. Now, those experiences and outcomes are then broken into a series of different levels. So we have early level, which is nursery to sort of P1, first level, which is P2 to P4, second level is P5 to P7, and both third and fourth levels are for S1 to S3, with the fourth level being, maybe think of it as a sort of stretch level, once maybe some students get to S3, but not one that all of them would be expected to reach. And here on screen now is how that kind of part of this works. So you can see on there examples of sets of experiences and outcomes that are working from early level through up to the fourth level. And you can see there this focus in different areas, focus on specific abilities and progression through different stages. And obviously a lot of this maybe seems very complicated, and in some ways it is, as we'll come to. The thing is, it's not really designed for the public. This is designed for teachers. So sometimes people look at it and go, well, yes, it's very complicated, but obviously that's fine. But that's not really the case, because part of the controversy around curriculum for excellence is in fact that complexity. It is the case that a curricular document used by teachers might be technical and more complex than you would expect the general public to understand. That's fine. But with Curriculum for Excellence, where you have these 4 capacities, 7 principles, hundreds of experiences and outcomes, on top of that, there were also 5 building the curriculum documents, which ran to hundreds of pages as well. The whole thing, when you're in the middle of it, trying to figure out a curriculum for young people, it's so complex that it just feels absolutely endless. And that then leads into this other problem with it, which is that it became, the phrase for this might be too tick boxy if you want, this experiences and outcomes approach, in which you saw the progression through stages and can do this, can do that, can do this as well, led to a very audit driven approach to the curriculum. It became about, ticking the boxes to say that the students had done all these things on these lists of experiences and outcomes. And then there were other questions. How many times do you have to do something to show that you can do it? Do you have to do it once? Do you have to do it 10 times? All of this ended up actually having a really quite restrictive impact on teaching, and ended up doing the opposite in some ways of what Curriculum for Excellence was supposed to do, which was open up a lot of freedom for what happened in the classroom. Ironically though, on the other side of this issue around it's too complex, it's kind of micromanaging, there's also this problem with Curriculum for Excellence being too vague. Standards were never really clear enough for a lot of people. There wasn't enough exemplification of what things should look like for teachers. There's also a criticism, which is valid, that the curriculum is entirely focused on skills and doesn't do enough to get into the ideas of what are the things that we expect students to know as part of what we expect them to do. And all of that leads to a situation where there's a feeling of a lack of national consistency. And some variation across the country is not just required, but is a positively good thing to pursue. But the lack of a sense of a standard over the country has led to a lot of the criticism of Curriculum for Excellence, and has maybe taken away some people's confidence in the curriculum as well. At the end of the day as well, Curriculum for Excellence made greater demands on teachers than had ever been the case before that. Under 5 to 14, you had assessments handed to you for all different levels, and the students went through them and you got your data and on you went. Now, teachers were being expected not just to build curricular models, but to build the assessments that made all of that work. And this is a good thing. This is more focused on young people. This should make things more relevant. But as I say, it asked more of teachers than ever before, and teachers were not given the resources or the time to make any of that actually work. On top of that, neither central government nor councils were willing to trust teachers in a way that was going to allow this kind of system to operate as intended. This is how you end up, as I say, with this audit-driven tick the boxes, prove to the people at the council that all the kids have done all the things. And on top of all of that, something that is often forgotten about the introduction and development of CFE is that all this was done during the period of austerity being imposed by the UK government. So at the very time when we were introducing this curriculum that was more expansive and made more demands but gave more freedom, everything else was being cut back. And it wasn't just that there were financial cuts that were affecting our ability to deliver this new curriculum. The impact of austerity went far beyond that. It had an impact on individuals right across the country, and that also, including teachers, and that had an impact in classrooms. So what does all this mean? Well, some people say what it means is we need rid of CFE entirely, just get it gone. That's not a practical solution. We can't undo Curriculum for Excellence any more than we can undo the last 20 years. But it does get at one of the major issues, that maybe the key oversight in the development of Curriculum for Excellence was the lack of review cycle that was kind of built into it. And what that means is that any review of Curriculum for Excellence then always looks reactive. It always looks like it's responding to a problem or a criticism. And as a consequence, it always looks political as opposed to educational. And that's a huge problem. But we're left ultimately, I suppose, with two options. One of them would be to try to establish that kind of review cycle in Curriculum for Excellence, to update the curriculum, simplify it to make it more effective, and then proceed on the basis of this being a developing curriculum that will change from this point going forward. Or maybe we're past the point where that's possible. Maybe CFE's poisoned. Maybe we're just at the stage where we just need to start again. We need a new process that learns new lessons, but learns the lessons of our last 20 years. Now, as I say, the CFE process, it started in 2002. It took about 10 years, a bit more, to properly implement. So if we started now on a new curriculum, we'd be talking about having something in place sometime in the 2030s. The question is, which one of those paths should Scotland go down? But either way, it very much feels like it's time to get started.